Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Stitch Sessions. We are 1 week away from Christmas, and if you're looking for that cute, adorable little add-on to a special gift, then this week's tutorial is for you. We're working on these beautiful, fuzzy, cozy little crochet Christmas slippers. And what's really extra special about this project is that we've made these slippers non-slip. So for those of you that have tile or hardwood throughout your home a lot, having something on the sole of the slipper that allows for a little bit of extra grip was really important in this project. So you'll be amazed at how we managed to make this project with a non-slip bottom. And we use this cozy chenille yarn. And it's a quick project you can whip up in a day or two and still add on to that special Christmas gift. So let's grab all of our materials and let's get stitching. This is going to be so much fun to work on. So these are all the materials that you guys are going to need to work on your slipper. So I found this fabulous chenille yarn, you'll never guess where, the dollar store. And it was only $2.50 Canadian for a 100-gram skein here. And I haven't used chenille too much. A few years back I did a couple of baby blankets with it, but it just came across this would make a perfect yarn for working on a crochet slipper. So you're going to need 1 ball of this chenille yarn. As always, it will depend on the size of your project. So my foot is generally between a 6.5 to a 7.5. I have a short foot, but I have a wide foot. So my shoe sizes can vary depending on the style of the shoe. But this project is really customizable. So I'll show you in a moment how we're going to adjust to a foot size. But for the most part, 1 ball should be enough. But I always say err on the side of caution. And if you think you're not quite sure, get a 2nd ball. But definitely it wouldn't take you any more than 2. So that's 100 grams of that. Now for the little cuff I did around, I added a contrasting color or a little accent color. And I picked up this Red Heart Hygge yarn, which I am thoroughly excited about using. I'm actually going to use this in a future project that I'm working on making a tutorial for you guys. So stay tuned for that. This has got a little bit of that really super soft, light little fuzz to it. It's just dreamy. And you're just going to need a wee bit of this. So this ball comes in 141 grams. And just in case you're wondering, the color of this is called Pearl. And on this ball, it doesn't actually say what the color is, and I'm not sure if it comes across on camera. It's a gray, very light lilac-y tone. So I like this color because it can go for a gentleman or a lady. So whatever is your preference. So you're going to need that. As always, you'll need a pair of scissors and a darning needle that will be big enough to fit your yarn. This, I would say, is definitely doesn't have the best of labeling here, but I would say this is a bulky 5 yarn. And also what you're going to need, well, I'll talk about that in a second. Let me tell you guys what you're going to need. The hook size I'm using for this project is a 6.5 millimeter hook, also known as a K or a size 10.5. Okay. The other thing you are going to need for this project is another great dollar store find. And this is a shelf and drawer liner. And I know what you're thinking, what on earth are you going to do with this? What we're going to do, because it's got this great little grip to it, we're going to use this to create the sole of our slipper. The thing when you're making crochet slippers is it's very slippery on hardwood or tile floors. So by adding a liner on the bottom, it just gives the slipper a bit of grip to the floor so you don't have any unfortunate situations, especially if you're giving these slippers as a gift for an older person or someone who's a little bit more unstable in their balance. So very important to have this on hand. There's a few different ways to make a sole, but I found this was the easiest to find the material for. So you can pick this up at the dollar store as well. And then of course, just sew on your sole, we are going to need a wee bit of just regular thread and a thread needle. So you can see that's a lot thinner than our yarn needle. Okay, so just in comparison, just want to pick that up there. So see, the yarn needle is a lot bigger. Okay, and I tried my best to find a yarn that was close in color to, it's kind of like this beigey brown to the sole, but it doesn't really matter. Again, it's on the bottom of the shoe, but I'm kind of funny like that. I try to match it up as much as I can. All right, let's get started on our slippers. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, I've already made one. And so I just kind of wanted to go over the breakdown of how we're going to create our slipper. I just love how that came out. This is super cozy. So with this project, we're actually going to start at the tip of the foot here. And it's going to be crocheted in the round, okay? And if you have been looking around for tutorials on crochet slippers, you're going to be amazed at how many wonderfully different ways there are to make slippers. So this is just one of many ways you can make them. So in this project, we're going to start from the toe. We're going to work our way around, and then we're going to build up through the foot, and then we're going to carry on through the heel. And then at the end, we're going to add this little tongue here, I call it, the little tongue of the shoe, and a little trim around. You can actually just make it just with this section and leave the rest as is, depending on what time of the year you're making this slipper for. So because I'm making this for winter and an add-on to my Christmas gift, I wanted it to be extra cozy. So that's why I created a little bit of a higher cuff to come up around the ankle and make it feel really cozy. Okay, so that is how we are going to create our slipper. And you're going to be amazed at just how easy this is. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to begin with our chenille yarn. And I just want to kind of give a little caveat to those of you that are still a little bit on the newer side. The only thing with this chenille yarn is sometimes it can be tricky to frog, which means to pull out your work. Just because, see how these fibers are just kind of, see, they come out a bit. Keep in mind it is dollar store yarn, but in general, chenille will tend to do that at the ends. So just be really careful how tightly, especially you crochet, because that will make pulling this through almost impossible. So normally I would start working in the round with a magic ring, but I'm actually just going to start with a slip knot. And then I'm going to chain 2. And again, I'm going to try not to be too loose, but not too tight either. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to go back into that first chain right there. And I want to do a half double crochet into that first chain. So I will bring up a loop so that I've got 3 loops on the hook because I yarned over ahead of time, and I pull through all 3. Okay. And now I want to do that 7 more times back into that same stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, insert back into the first chain. And the other thing with this yarn is you got to really feel it out. Now you don't have to use the chenille yarn. Absolutely, you can use any yarn you like. But I just thought this was so cozy that I couldn't resist. And there's the second one. So you're going to do that for a total of 8 into the same stitch all together. Okay, one more time, yarn over, go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, and oops, pull through. So I've done 4 so far, so I'm going to do 4 more, and I'll meet you at the end of round 1. So at the end of round 1, you're going to have 8 stitches, okay? So I just want to show you that it might be a little tricky to see. So you just want to find your V's here, okay? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it'll take some getting used to being able to see those stitches, especially if you're working with this yarn. But once you get the hang of it, you'll be okay. So now what we want to do is we want to find the top of our first stitch, which is right there, and we're just going to slip stitch to join our yarn, to join our round, okay? So just insert and pull through both of them. So that is the end of our first round. So now we're going on to round 2. For round 2, we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to do 1/2 double crochet back into that same stitch at the base of the chain 1. So we don't really count the chain 1 as anything for this project. I just use it as a starter. And now for round 2, we're going to go back into that same stitch, which is right there. So again, with this yarn, you just kind of have to feel your way through. I can feel that that's the one we worked into. I'm going to go back into that and do a 1/2 double crochet. So the goal here is to do 2 stitches into every stitch all the way around. So round 1 started with 8 stitches. At the end of round 2, you're going to have 16 stitches. I'm going to do that one more time. So into the very next stitch, which is right there, we're going to do 2 1/2 double crochets. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Yarn over, back into that same stitch, pull through all 3. Okay, so do that all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 2. All right, so I have 24 stitches, and I'm just going to slip stitch into that very first stitch to join my round. Okay, so at this point, because I'm making these for me, what I did is now you can kind of fold the circle in half, and I can kind of fit the top of I just put it over the top of my foot like that, and it just fits comfortably over my toes. But I am going to increase one more, just a bit more in this next round. And again, depending on the foot you're making it for, you may want to do an additional full increase round. I'm not going to increase it fully. I'm only going to increase it in each side, okay, as opposed to increasing every third or every every third stitch, which can be what you might be doing depending on how wide the foot is for you. If you're making this as a gift and you want it to be a surprise, an easy way to do this is you can either take a pair of socks, if you can sneak a pair of socks of the person, or even a shoe would work, or an existing slipper. So what we're going to do for me, and again, I'm between a 6.5 to a 7.5, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to put 1/2 double crochet into that same stitch. And then into the same stitch, I'm going to do another 1/2 double crochet. So I'm going to increase this stitch here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1/2 double crochet into the next stitch and into each of the next 11 stitches in total. Okay, so we've got an increase here, which is 2 1/2 double crochets, and then I'll have 1/2 double crochet for the next 11 stitches. So I've got 1 here. This will be my second, and so on. 10 and 11. Okay, so now into the next stitch, I'm going to do an increase again. So basically, I'm going to do 1 and then another one into that same stitch. So I just placed the increase, because I have 24 stitches, I placed the increase on the first and then on the 13th. So half of 24 is 12, and every 12th stitch I would increase. So now I've done an increase. For the next 11, which should take me right back to the beginning, I'm just going to go back and place 1/2 double crochet into each stitch as usual. Woo. And for me, that will be the end of my increasing rounds. Okay. So at the end of round 5, I have 26 stitches, and I just Wanted to count to double check, and it definitely should be curling up like that. That's exactly what we want to have happen. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch at the top of your first stitch to join your round. So basically what we've done is rounds 1 through 5 have all been increase rounds, okay? So now for me, when I fold it like that and I can fit the top of my foot in, it fits really nicely. This is so cozy, I love it. So 26 stitches. Now you may increase yours up to as much as 36 stitches if you were following the regular increase round, depending on the width of your foot, okay? So you do have liberty to do that. Now, what's gonna happen for round 6 is we're just gonna chain 1, and now we're not gonna do increases anymore. We're just gonna go back into this same stitch. We're gonna do 1/2 double crochet, and that is all we're gonna do for this round. So into each stitch, we're going to do a 1/2 double crochet. See how some of these are standing up a bit? That's again working with chenille yarn. Because it can be tricky to pull through, some of the stitches will be a little bit looser or tighter than others. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It is the nature of the yarn, and again, that's why working on slippers with it is fantastic. Okay, so just take your time if this is your first time working with chenille. And you'll eventually learn to kind of feel your way through to find those stitches. But see, for me, I'm now accustomed to really being able to look and find those V's. So this is the thing with some of this novelty yarn. It can feel so wonderful and so great. And then you buy it, you take it home, and then you realize it is extremely difficult to work with because you can't see your stitches. But we're doing a-okay with this one so far. Okay, so just 1 stitch into each and every single stitch around, and at the end of round 6, you should still have 26 stitches. So at the end of round 6, your work is going to look something like this. We'll have to weave that tail in. Okay, and now you can actually see the foot taking shape. Okay, so if I show you my other slipper here. So this is now the same as that part there. So now for round 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, we're just going to keep stitching in the round, so no more increases. So for me, from round 6 to 13, it was just 1 stitch in every stitch, and it took me right up to this point here. Now, where this is on my particular foot is just before your kind of ankle begins here. So now this would go up into your leg. So we're going to keep, so your foot should fit all the way in with the back end of the foot and the heel sticking out, and then we're going to take you through that. So for now, keep going. So I've got the end of my round here, slip stitch to join. And you know what, if it really helps you too, I forgot to mention, have a stitch marker on hand, a safety pin, a bobby pin, whatever it takes. Sometimes it is a bit tricky to see, especially with this yarn, so you can always just have a little stitch marker there so it's a little bit more easy to see visually where the end of everything is. But for now, you're always just going to chain 1 and right back into that same stitch. You're going to 1/2 double crochet and then 1/2 double crochet into every single stitch all the way around. So do that for as many rounds as you need before your foot starts to curve up into your ankle, and I'll meet you there. All right, guys, so I just have to make a little correction. I had said that you're going to repeat row 6 for another 6 rounds. It's actually 6 rounds in total. So you would do round 6 and repeat that for 6 rounds. So you're actually going to be up to round 12 at this point, not round 13. Now, if you have a longer foot, then 13 rounds would be a-okay, but I just wanted to add that correction in. because for mine, that's what I ended up doing here. So it was rounds 1 through 5 were increased rounds, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 were all just doing 1 in the round. Okay, so now we are working on to round 13, and we're no longer going to be working in rounds anymore. We're going to be working in rows. So at this point, you may have tried on the top part of your slipper, and it should reach just before your foot kind of moves up the ankle, depending on how snug you want it to be. Okay, so some people might take it right up there. I just kept mine right here because I knew I was going to add a little cuff around there. So now what we're going to do is round 13, we're going to begin to move around with 1 stitch, but we're not going to go all the way around. We're going to stop here, and then we're going to work back and forth in rows to create the rest of the foot. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. So round 13, you're going to chain 1 as usual, and you're going to do 1 half double crochet back into that same stitch. And for row 13, if I can get this to come through, we're going to do 1 half double crochet into each stitch for a total of 19 stitches. Okay, so that would be 1. The next one is 2, and then 3, and so on. Okay, so do that for a total of 19 stitches, and I will meet you at your 19th stitch. Okay, so I've done my 19 stitches, and if I lay my work down, now you can see it's created a bit of a lip here. Yeah, so you can see the groove. So at the end of 19 stitches, you're going to chain 1. Whoops. Got away from me there. And you're going to turn your work. Okay. And then you're going to half double crochet right back into that first stitch, and you're going to go back across where you came from. So it's 1 half double crochet into each stitch, and you should still have 19 stitches at the end. And you should be able to see now. So now we're definitely creating another section to our foot. Okay, so this is row 14 or round 14. And this is now basically what we're going to do for row 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Now for me, I did up to row 19 because I continued to create this section all the way until just about the tip of my heel here. There's going to be an additional 2 rows that's going to round up behind the heel. So your foot may be a bit longer than mine. So you may have to go up to around 20 maybe, or 21. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep going. And just you're going to keep doing 1 stitch into every stitch around. Into your last stitch. Once you go into the last stitch, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and go back the same way. So we're going to basically go back and forth until we build up the rest of our foot going into our heel. I'm going to meet back up with you here in a few minutes just to kind of remind you of how to go into the last stitch, chain 1, and turn around. Okay, and then I'll set you loose for a few rounds, or rows. Sorry, I keep saying rounds, it's rows. Okay, so I'm just coming up to my last stitch here, and it's easy to almost miss it because that's where we chained 1 and did the half double crochet. So we want to make sure we get right into that stitch. And as always, if you're unsure, remember to count your stitches. So there we go. So again, I've got another set of 19 stitches. So now you can really see how it's going to start to form the bottom of the slipper there. Okay. And so now we've chained 1. As you can see, I have my stitch marker in there, so I knew where the end of my increasing rounds were all the way through. These things can be handy, especially when you're working with yarn that you can't see very clearly. Actually, I don't need that in there anymore. So take that out. Okay, so at the beginning of each row now, chain 1 and do your usual 1/2 double crochet into each stitch. Okay, so go ahead and do that. I'm going to finish building up the rest of the bottom of my slipper, and I'm going to meet you at the end of my row 19. For you, it may be 20 or 21, but I'll meet you there. Okay, I'm at the end of row 19, and things have just gotten exciting because this is how much I have left of this yarn, and I think it's just going to take us to the end of our slippers. So it looks like we will get a full pair out of one skein, so I'm kind of excited by this. So we've reached row 19, and now what we want to do, so like this one here, so row 19, so if I just match it up to there, so see how that is where we're going to close up our heel. So we have 2 more rows to go. So for me, this is where the back end of my heel, just the little curve up, was sticking out. So I needed 2 more rows to just come up around the curve and then cinch up the back. So that is what we're going to do, and I am so excited. I think we're going to have just enough yarn out of this one skein to do it. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to turn our work, and now we're going to do 1/2 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. Okay, so we're going to go back into that same stitch we just came out of. So that's 1, and that's 2. Okay, so we've finished row 20. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we've got 1 more row to go, and I don't know if we're going to make it. Let's see. So now we're going to do 1/2 double crochet. We now have 18 stitches in our row, or our previous row. So we're going to do 1/2 double crochet now into each of the next 8 stitches. Okay, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Oh man, this is getting really close. I don't know if we're going to make it to the end of this row. And now for stitch 9 and 10, we are going to decrease. So we're going to do these 2 stitches together. So we're going to yarn over, go into stitch 9, pull up a loop. Now we're going to go into stitch 10, pull up a loop. So we have 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through all of them. So this will now take our stitch count for this row from 18 to 17. Okay, and now I'm really hoping we can make it right to the end of this row. It's just 1/2 double crochet into the last few stitches here, and we are pretty much done. I see the end coming up. Let's see. You won't believe this, guys. Right just before the last stitch. So let me pull that out. Okay, so here's the deal. Based on how it's worked out, I think if I had done a slightly shorter tail at the beginning of both of my slippers, I probably would have had enough in one skein, that's 100 grams, to make a full pair of slippers. But because I always err on the side of caution, luckily I got a second skein. So I need just a wee bit more to not only finish the last stitch, but now we need to stitch up the back of our slipper. Otherwise, 100 grams would have been perfecto for creating a slipper that was anywhere between a size 6.5 to 7.5 foot. We almost made it, guys. All right, let me just attach this and we'll continue on. Okay, so I've just attached my additional yarn here. So now we can finish the last row. You can see that's where I attached my yarn. Can you believe that? Just one stitch left. All right. So this is the end of row 21. And this, see how it's starting to curve up a little bit there? So this is our full slipper. And again, at this point, so, whoops. So now what I do is I kind of would try it on. I put it on my foot, see how it feels. And then we're going to sew up the back end. These are so cozy and comfy. Fantastic for winter slippers. Okay, so how we're going to seal up the back of our heel. What I like to do is we're now going to, so we've been working with the right side facing out. We're now just going to turn our work so that the wrong side is facing out. And if it's easier for you, just so you don't get confused, you can turn that whole slipper inside out, just like that. Okay. And now we're going to slip stitch this back end shut from the wrong side. Okay. So what you want to do is you've got the loop on your hook. You want to go, actually I would chain one. Now go back into that same stitch and I'm going to meet up with the very top stitch of the other side there, which is right here. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then I'm just going to pull the yarn through, whoops, all of the loops. So I can get a little testy here. There we go. And then I just make sure I open that up and I like how it looks. It's an even stitch. Now sometimes I had to take this out a few times just because it looked a little bit uneven, especially if you are leaving this without an additional cuff. You want to make sure that it's got a nice little even seaming. So I'm pretty happy with that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my next stitch in the front. I'm going to go into the full stitch and then I'm going to find the corresponding stitch in the back. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of those as well as the loop on my hook. Okay, be careful. You want it to be snug, not too tight. You also don't want to run the risk of snapping your yarn, which I don't think would happen, but you never know. So front part, the back part, pull through, and then continue to pull through your loop. Okay, so then insert into the front part, insert into the back part, pull through, and the loop. You're going to do that, see how it's sealing up the back? So you're going to do that all the way to the end there. Okay, so I'm just going to use the one I've already done. So here, if I just open this up, you can see that I actually started from the inside of the rim here, as opposed to starting right away into the stitches, because I wanted it to look like it was coming from the inside out. So I'm just going to pull this up a bit so you can see we actually worked around the posts of the inside. Now, as we work on this section, keep in mind that it is a little bit of eyeballing and hit and miss, because sometimes depending on, you know, where the first stitch of the corner falls or where you pick up a stitch, so just do it the best that you can and how you like it. Remember, this is art, right? So it all depends on how you feel about it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start in this corner here, just where the top part of the foot and the ankle meet. Okay, so we're going to just, have my slipper turned right side out, and I'm just going to take this corner and I'm going to open it up, and as you can see the stitches there, the posts. I'm going to start right in this corner. So I'm going to grab my hook of yarn. That's where we're going to begin. So I'm going to take some of my Huga yarn. I'm still going to use my same 6.5 millimeter hook. I'm going to create a slip knot. This is also some fabulous yarn. Feels so nice. Okay, so I've turned the inside out forward. So that's the front part, the lip there, the front part of my slipper. And what I want to do is right in the corner here, I'm going to go around this post. Now, what I want to be careful is I don't want it to show on the other side. So I'm going to insert it through one of the loops of this post. So see that? That's just one of the loops of the post. So I'm going to slip stitch to join. And now it's nicely secured in there. Okay. And so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to double crochet around the posts of each of the next 11 stitches. My goal is to get to the other side of that corner there. Okay, so I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to find the, goddamn lighting. I'm going to find the next post, which is right here. I'm going to yarn over. Actually, I'm going to work into the post I just worked into. And I'm also going to try and work over, I'm going to try and work over the tail that I've created there. So I'm just going to kind of dig into anywhere in through here. I just don't want it to come out the other side, which is good. And then I'm going to yarn over. Don't mind this tail, I'm trying to work over it. If that confuses you, definitely sew in your tails at the end. Okay, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2. Okay, so we're now using double crochets instead of half double crochets. So I'm going to do that again into the next post. So now I can kind of push my stitches forward and see. So my next post is right here. So I'm just going to kind of go into one of the loops of the post, just like that. Pull through 2, and pull through 2. So I'm just leaving the tail there. I don't want to confuse you guys if you're a little bit on the newer side. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to yarn over into the next post. I'm going to find a loop or 2 that I can feed into. Oops. Maybe a little tricky, so just be patient. There we go. Yarn over, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so you can see that your work is looking like that. Now if I turned it over, see the front of your slipper, it looks like it's coming up from underneath, which is exactly what the desired look that I'm looking for. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I'm going to meet you back once you get to that corner there. Okay, so I've done 10 stitches, and now I'm going into my 11th stitch, and what I'm going to do is a half double crochet. So I'm just going to find the loop here. Oops. And I'm going to do a half double crochet because I want to create a bit of a rounded edge. So you can see here, it looks a bit rounded. So by going down a bit in the height of the stitch, just kind of evens it out a little bit. And then I'm actually going to go into the very next one here. Just find a spot anywhere. It's always tricky to be exact in these cases. So just find a spot close by and just slip stitch that. Okay, so now it's anchored it. So if I turn it around, now you can see it's rounded on that side and it's rounded out on that side too. Whoops, just like that. Okay. So now what we're going to do, and as you can see when you look at the inside, it's been worked into the front loops here. Okay, so when we turned it around, so just got the tip sneaking out at the moment. Now we're going to work a few more rounds to create our little tongue there. Okay, so we are now going to chain 1. And if I bring my work forward, you can see that I've got the tops of my stitches are here. And now I've got some bottom loops here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and I'm just going to go into the bottom front loop. Okay, so this is the front top loop, that's the back top loop. This is the bottom front loop. And I'm just going to go into there and do a regular double crochet. Now this is an added detail you don't have to do. You can go into the full stitch, but it was just kind of the seamless look I wanted to create in the front here. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's all you're going to do all the way across. I'm going to find the next bottom front loop right there. And I'm just going to resolve a regular double crochet. Okay, so now I'm going to find the next one, which is right here. So you're going to have to just put your hook under and through and resolve the double crochet as usual. So if I just turn this around just so you can see the effect, see it's pushing the top of the stitch forward to just create that really sweet little knitted look. Again, it's on the inside, so up to you. But what I wanted on the front is for this to create a seamless look. Okay? So we're going to do that all the way across until you hit this last full stitch here. And I'll meet you here just before we go on to this one, okay? So I'm just coming up to my 11th stitch here, and I'm going to do the same thing, bottom front loop. But here I'm going to do a half double crochet. So I'm going to I'm going to pull through all 3. And now I've got that first little loop I started with at the very beginning when we started row 1 here. I'm actually just going to go into that and slip stitch. Okay. And again, that continues the rounded look that I love so much. Okay. And then I'm just going to go maybe somewhere into the inside of the slipper, and I'm going to do that too. I'm going to slip stitch there. Don't worry if this is kind of throwing you off a little bit. You can just keep yours very straight if you like. I just like the idea of it kind of having this nice rounded effect, and it looks like it's coming out from the bottom. And the other reason why I'm doing the front bottom loops is I would like to have the option of folding this down, just like in this one. So if it's a little bit of a, I'm feeling a bit more colder that day, I like to have it up. But if I want to, I can actually turn it down, just like the cuff. And then suddenly it gives you a completely different look. Okay, so I just thought having those loops kind of pushed forward just gives it a really pretty look. All right. So as always, you can do yours in any fashion you like, but this is generally how we're going to work our tongue here. Okay, so this is the second row. I did 4 rows for mine. Okay, depending on how long you'd like yours to be. I think 4 rows is good enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our work, and now we're facing the inside, so you can see how it pushed that forward. And now what we're going to do is we are going to slip stitch into the back loops of the next stitch here. So that would be right here. So slip stitch back up. And we're going to continue with a half double crochet first into the back loop only this time. Okay, half double crochet. And now we're going to go back up to double crochets. So you find the back loop, insert your hook, pull through the first 2, and pull through the last 2. And don't worry if that loop is stretching out a bit, that is a-okay. It'll all relax once we get a few more of these stitches underway. So that's what we're going to do all the way across. is a double crochet into the back loop of each stitch. And whenever you get to your second last stitch, so my second last stitch is going to be here, you're going to go down to a half double crochet, and then you're going to slip stitch into the very bottom there. And that just kind of helps maintain the rounded shape of your tongue. And then we're going to do that for one more row. So I did a total of 4 rows. So we've just begun row 3, and then you're going to do a row 4 to finish off the tongue. Okay, I'm going to meet you up just at the end of row 3 just to make sure that you're doing okay and to carry you through onto the next row. So in the meantime, it's 1 double crochet into the back loops. Okay, so I'm coming up to my second last stitch here. So I'm going to do a half double crochet into that back loop. So I'm going to pull through all 3. For some reason it's catching there. And now into the very last loop, I'm going to slip stitch, which is where I had slip stitched before. So I'm just going to keep it nice and loose though. I don't want it to be too tight. There we go. Oops. Okay, now when I turn my work, there we go. So you can really see it's taking shape. And we have one more row to go. So we are going to turn our work, and now we're going to slip stitch. Actually, I'm going to slip stitch back down into here again one more time into the side of the slipper. Just anywhere you can find a little bit of a loop, and it just helps to anchor that side down a wee bit. Now I'm going to turn my work. So see, it's coming up really, really nicely. So I'm hoping you guys can see that I'm having a bit of an issue with the lighting on my camera. It seems to be very picky. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip stitch back. Just going to move that out of the way. I'm going to slip stitch back into the previous stitch. Just going to snuggle it in there. Slip stitch. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to half double crochet into the front loops. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with the design of going into the front loop. So now I'm facing the front. I'm going to go into the bottom front loop, which is right there of this first stitch. I'm going to do a half double crochet. And now I'm going to go back up to my double crochets, but I'm going to work into the front bottom loop. So remember, see that V? That's the top of my work. And this is the side of the stitch. So this is the bottom front loop. So that's where I'm going to work into. So I'll yarn over. This stitch has just been worked into. So I'm going to go into the bottom front loop, pull through, and just do my double crochet as usual. Now for you, you can just go directly into the full stitch if that's what you like. That will work beautifully just as well. Okay, so this is just for those of you that if you wanted to follow along exactly on how I did mine, that is how I did it. So 1 double crochet all the way till you get to your second last stitch. As usual, you're going to do a half double and then a slip stitch, and then we are done. Okay, I've come up to the second last stitch again. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to find the bottom front loop, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to half double crochet, and now I'm going to slip stitch into that last stitch just before the end there. And so for me, I've done my tongue here. So I'm going to now go into the inside, and I'm going to find a little spot somewhere close to the edge, but just underneath, where I can slip stitch to secure that side down to the inside of my slipper. And this is where sometimes it gets a little bit trying of your patience to try and find a spot. There we go. And I'm just going to pull it through and pull it through. Now I'm not going to snip my yarn because from here I'm going to continue to do a cuff, but I just wanted you to see the effect there. So now if I want to, I can roll it out and roll it over and it can sit nicely like that. Now again, you can make yours longer if you like. I found that 4 rows for me worked out just nicely. Okay, so we're going to take you now through the cuff. Okay, now to work the cuff is going to be a bit more straightforward, although here we're working into the sides of stitches. Remember, our work was worked this way in the heel. So the edge is now, you're coming across the sides of stitches. So we just want to find a spot anywhere that you feel comfortable, and it's just going to be double crochets. And the general rule is that when we have double crochets, we usually do 2 stitches into the side of each one. Now this was half double crochets that we worked, so usually it's a bit testy with half double crochets, but because it's a bit of a bulky yarn, I'm going to suggest working 1 double crochet into the side of each row. So the rows should be fairly visible, and I'm just going to see what I did here. I ended up working 26 stitches to create my cuff. And again, because part of the stitches I'm starting from underneath as well. So I'm going to chain 1, and this chain 1 doesn't really count as anything. It's just to kind of help us get going. So I'm going to yarn over, and I am going to just find where I think would feel good to insert my hook into, which would be right there. I want it to be fairly close to the corner. Okay. And then I'm just going to go into the very next space. I'm trying to at least get 2 loops. I want to try not to work fully into the sides of stitches. You can certainly do that. I just feel like if I can embed it somewhere in the loops, that it will look a little bit more uniform. Like that. Okay. And then I'm just going to find a spot somewhere around there. I want them fairly close together. Okay, and then somewhere around there. So this is definitely going to test your patience. So if you've kind of zoomed along to do your slipper, what I would recommend you do is I would work on the complete slipper, and I would do the other one first before coming back to work on the cuff. I might even say take a break and then come back, because this part here will definitely try your patience, so to speak. But as I stated before in the intro, it is a quick project. You can definitely do this in a quick afternoon. So it's a great add-on gift to something. So it won't take you too long, but definitely it may change your mood by the end of this part. Because sometimes when you're trying to find stitches in a challenging yarn, it can really drive you a little crazy. But we are doing A-okay. Okay, so that's how I have mine. See, actually, see how that's, I'm actually going to undo that. I would like my stitches to sit a little bit closer together. So see how these two are sitting? So that's why I'm saying it, you may have to unravel a few times, and that is A-okay. So I am maybe going to find a spot somewhere closer. Just like that. Yeah. Okay, guys. I'm going to leave you to finish this round, and I'm going to meet you when you get to this corner here. Remember to take your time and be patient. See you guys in a bit. Okay, so I've come to the end of my first row of the cuff, and so you can see that my stitches have just nestled in there nicely. So you might have more stitches or less stitches than I do. I have 28 stitches in this case, so I probably snuggle them a little bit more snugly than I did the other slippers, so not a big deal. But we've come to our last stitch here right at the corner, and what I want to do, just to kind of create a little bit more uniformity with the other side, is just dip down to the inside of the slipper, just anywhere, and I'm just going to do a little slip stitch there. And it just kind of creates a little uniformity there with the tongue, but I don't actually want to attach it to the tongue. So see, I went just below there. Hopefully you can see that, okay? And then I just turn my work, I chain one. And now we're going to just do front and back post stitches to create this really pretty ribbed effect. And I ended up doing 2 more rows, which gave me a total of 3 rows of that stitch. So just continuing on with the double crochet, I'm going to yarn over. And now instead of going into the stitch, I'm going to just go in behind the post. See that? And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And I just resolve it like a regular double crochet. Okay. And if you want to really brush up on your front and post double crochet stitches, I'm going to have a link up there in the cards and as well in the description box down below if you want to have a little bit more practice. But we're going to do some here. So we just did a front post double crochet. So when we do that, we're going in between the posts, in between the stitch, see, not at the top, because we want to push the post to the front or forward. Now, the next one we're going to do is a back post double crochet. So for us to do that, we'll yarn over, but we're going to go in from behind and through. And what this will do is this will push the post to the back. So you can see it's being pushed to the outside, and that's why we call it a back post double crochet. We'll yarn over as usual and pull it through. And we're just going to resolve it like a regular double crochet. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. And that is what we're going to do for this row. We're going to do 1 front post double crochet, and then in the next stitch we will do a back post double crochet. And we're just going to keep alternating that all the way around until we get to the end of our cuff row. Okay, so just did a few there. So you can see these 2 are in the front and these 2 are pushed to the back. Once we get into round 3 or row 3, you'll see how it'll really become much more prominent. So for now, continue on front, back, front, back, front, back, all the way, and I'll meet you back up here. Okay, we're just at the end of row 2, and I'm just going to insert directly into that last stitch, just a regular double crochet. So I've done my alternating effect, and now you can see how it's beginning to take on that ribbed look. Okay, very cute. So we just have 1 more row to do, and we're going to follow the same technique. But now it's going to be much easier to follow because we're just going to do front post where there's already a front post, back post where there's already a back post. So this one right here is a front post to us. So we've chained, oops, so we're going to chain 1. And we're going to start right away with that front post here. Okay, so just going to push it through, pull up, and pull through. Okay, so the next one is a back post. What's a back post to us now because it's facing away from us? So we're just going to go in from behind. So what it is with this row is it's much easier to figure out what you're going to do where. Okay, oops. And then the next one is a front post because I can see it right there. I'm just going to insert and pull through. Okay, the next one is a back post. So you're going to do that all the way to the end. We're just about finished. Okay, I'm at the end of round 3 and my cuff is pretty much done. I'm happy with that length and I can feel I can fold it over if I want to create that nice moccasin look, or I can fold it up. So we are good to go with this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very last little trim round of slip stitches. So what I want to do is just to kind of round out this row here, I'm just going to very gently and loosely slip stitch into the side of the previous round, just really loosely. I don't want it to pinch down, I just want it to curve. Then I'm going to turn my work and I'm just going to slip stitch back across the way just to give it a little finishing touch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it into the front loops only. So these are the loops that face me or closest to me. So I'm just going to go right away into that very first one there, and I'm just going to yarn over and just gently, very relaxed, pull through. Okay, front loop, which is the loop closest to me, just slip stitch. And you definitely want to stay relaxed because you don't want the top to start pinching inward, because a slip stitch doesn't have the same kind of give that a double or a half double crochet has. Okay, so that's it. You're going to do that all the way to the end. See that? So it just gives it a really nice finishing round. So you're going to do that all the way to the end. Slip stitch into the last one, snip your yarn, and your slipper is just about done. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And then we're going to talk about how to make sure that the sole of your slipper is nice and safe for you to walk on. Okay, so I came up to the end of my row here, my finishing round. So I'm just, snipping my yarn. And then I'm going to weave that in, and we are finished. See how nice that looks? Just that little trim row at the very end. So you've got your tongue that can fold down, which I really like. And now you can kind of snuggle up well over your ankle and a bit of your leg. So guys, here we are, our really sweet crochet slippers. So this is such an easy design, and you can whip this up definitely in an afternoon or so, especially if you want to make, just put a little add-on gift to something you're already giving someone. So these crochet slippers are fantastic. Now, you can give these, again, as is, but the thing with crocheted slippers is they tend to be very slippery if you're walking across hardwood or tiled floors. So I've discovered through the wonderful world of YouTube how to add something to the bottom to give yourself a little bit of grip. So that's what we're going to do next. We are going to take this drawer liner, which I've tested out, and it's pretty good. It doesn't slip at all on the floor. So I've already kind of cut out a shape here, and I actually am going to add 2 layers to mine. I'm just thinking that maybe this might wear through. I'm not sure yet. So I'm going to add 2 layers. You definitely could get away with 1. So I've already done 1 here for my first slipper, and what I did is I just placed the slipper down. So I took my roll there, I just placed the slipper down, and I loosely, you can draw it out with marker, I just took the scissors and cut around it, which gave me this shape here. So the idea is that you want it to sit on the sole of your foot, just nicely like that. You definitely want to at least get to the heel because that's a major part of where you walk. Sorry, I'll take this shorter piece out for a second. And then I just trimmed around the edges here, and you can even trim a little bit more. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, if I'm slipping on the side of my foot, that I'm not going to slip at all. But that's basically it. It's not anything too exacting. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our thread needle and sew it in. And I'm actually going to do a little bit closer to the inside edge here so that if I feel like I need to trim off a bit, I can. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to grab my thread now, and I'm going to yarn, I'm going to thread it through, and I'm going to take quite a long piece. So I might try and trace my foot around at least twice, just so that I don't have to reattach the thread. Whoops. Okay, so I've got my thread through my needle. Oops, be careful you don't get that all knotted up. And now we're going to begin to sew the sole of our slipper. Now I recommend, if you're a little bit unsure, pinning this down first so it doesn't move. Okay, so I'm not going to pin it down just because I'm a rebel like that. So I'm just going to hold it here, and I'm just kind of making sure that I can secure it on the inside. I don't want to actually sew my slipper shut in any way. And off I go. So I'm just going to kind of insert, making sure I catch a bit of yarn. And the beautiful thing about this material is it's holey, so it makes it really easy to kind of feed your yarn through. And I would just feed it through till you get close to the end. And I'd probably do it a few times here just to kind of create a bit of a knot so that it'll secure your thread at least at one end here. Now the thing is, with thread this long, you have to be really careful you don't start getting it tangled and knotted in parts of it, because then it'll become useless and you have to cut your thread anyway. So just like that. And this is all you're going to do all the way around to secure the sole of your slipper. Now notice how I'm going a little bit further in from the edge. I'm doing that just so that I can have some extra give in case I need to trim it inward. I have the ability to do so. But once I'm done, I will trim a little bit closer to where the stitch is, not right beside it because I don't want it to come undone. But I don't want to leave too much flap here because that's another way that somebody could trip, right? Because it could roll under itself and then you're going to trip and fall, and that's not going to be a good situation. So for now, whoops, I'm just going to trace the outside edge here. Oh, it's already getting tangled. It might be challenging to see on camera, guys, and I realize I probably actually should have used a darker yarn just so you guys could see what's happening here. What is happening here is I'm getting a bit tangled already. There we go. Okay. So, but I think you get the gist here. So I'm just basically finding anywhere around here, and I'm just going to sew it all the way around. And then of course make sure that you try this on and that it feels secure for you, and then you are off to the races. Boy, this really gets caught on the edges here. Okay guys, so I'm going to set you loose. This is pretty much straightforward. I'm not sure how much you are able to see on camera with such thin thread, but I think you get the gist of what's happening. Just inserting and pulling through, and as long as, see, it's pretty secure. Okay, and then you've got the sole done, and then you do it on the other one, and you are ready to rock your crochet slipper. So finish this one up, and then I'll meet up with you at the end just so you can see kind of the finished product there. And here we have it, our crochet slippers. I am really happy with how this project turned out, and I hope you've enjoyed coming along on this week's crochet adventure. This pair is perfect and ready to go as an add-on to one of my Christmas gifts. So hopefully this will give you a little extra idea on what you can do to add a little extra something special to your Christmas gifts, or maybe you're making it for yourself. And these are super fun, and it's been a pleasure to take you through this week's tutorial. I'm also leaving a couple of links in the description box down below for more of our winter crochet projects as well as Christmas crochet projects. If you're still curious about checking some of those out, you can check those out in the link below. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you press that subscribe button so you never miss an episode when we upload every Wednesday. And coming in the new year, we have more fun stuff planned for you with a brand new series. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, everyone, happy holidays, happy crocheting, and take care.